Welcome back to Inside the Game with CNHI Sports, where we will take you inside the biggest headlines in the sports world. Let's waste no time and go out to one of the biggest stories from last week. We're going to South Bend to catch up with CNHI Sports Indiana's Austin Hough. Now we're going to welcome in for the first time Austin Hough of the Goshen News. Austin covers Notre Dame for us up in northern Indiana. And Austin, you were in the place to be on Saturday night. What was the atmosphere like in South Bend as the Irish knocked off the top-ranked team in the country?
Well, first off, thank you, George, for letting me come on to this podcast or video conference. I don't know what we officially called this, but I'm excited to be here. You know what? They made sure to remind us in the press box that there were only 11,000 fans in the building because it felt like a big game. Like the crowd was unbelievable. In my time covering the Irish, they have played their home schedule hasn't been maybe as strong at times. They played Michigan to open the 2018 season at home. And that's really the one game I can remember where the crowd was like a factor. It felt like a factor on Saturday night. Like it should not have been. It should. I don't know if they were lying about that 11,000 number, but it felt like, a full-size crowd. It was really an unbelievable experience to be there.
This is a game that obviously Brian Kelly made no bones about it. They were preparing for this game for the last couple of weeks. It's something they circled for a long time. Is there any concern now after putting all that effort in and kind of getting to the top of the mountain and winning that game that there could be a letdown this week against Boston College?
Well, if there is, they're not expressing it, at least publicly. Brian Kelly, even after the game again on Saturday night, early Sunday morning, technically is when he started talking. He was, hey, this is a big win. We get it. It's a big win, but it's not the end. We got Boston College next week, and if we don't focus, they can beat us. And he reiterated that point on Monday. And I think he had all of his players reiterate that point to the media on Tuesday night. Like, this is a big game. Like Boston College can beat us. We saw Boston College 2 weeks ago almost beat Clemson. So you never know. You got to be really focused this week, especially it's a road game. You're coming off the big win. This is the last full week of class. Next week is finals for Notre Dame because everyone's going home before Thanksgiving. This is the crunch time of the academic year as well. It's another thing to play, especially at Notre Dame where, academics is obviously a huge deal. So, it has all the makings of a trap game, right? But they are acting as if it is not a trap game and they are ready to go for this game against Boston College.
This is a group just a couple of years ago was a playoff team. You were there at that game against Clemson. Obviously setting themselves up now pretty well for another run at that. They're probably going to see the Tigers again in the AFC title game, ACC title game. I hate to kind of even say probably, though, in 2020, just because who knows what's going to happen between then and there. But there's got to be a feeling confidence up there now that this could be a team that could play for a national championship. Is that the case?
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what Brian Kelly basically said a couple weeks ago before the Clemson game, right after the Pitt game. You saw them beat Pittsburgh 45-3, and on the surface, like that's obviously a big win. But Kelly was talking about after the game, like we challenged our guys, like we have to be at a level to play Clemson. Like Kelly basically said, like he knows what this team can be. He knows this team has enough talent to win the national championship. He had to get his guys to play like that. And you saw that with the huge win against Pittsburgh. You saw that when they basically controlled Georgia Tech start to finish. And you saw that obviously on Saturday where they played at the championship level and beat Clemson, who has won 2 national championships in recent memory and obviously went to it last year to the title game. At this rate, like you said, it feels like they should be going to the ACC championship game in 2020. You never know. It might get canceled or anything. But I think a national championship is not out of the question. I mean, obviously, you look at the other teams around the country, Alabama, Ohio State, those are the 2 teams. Oh, and Clemson obviously still there. But I think national championship is definitely like not out of the question, especially after how they looked Saturday night, where you can make an argument they still win that game, even if Clemson has Trevor Lawrence on the field.
Is there an advantage at all for some of the ACC schools? They've had a schedule amongst the major power conferences closer to normal than probably anybody else. They're scheduled to play 10 games, which is only really 1 or 2 down. and they started about the same time of year they normally would, didn't have that big interruption after they started summer training camp. Do you think any of that will help Notre Dame and Clemson as they move forward?
I don't know. I mean, on one hand, yeah, you're going to have more game reps and you're going to know what your team is, right? But like, you can make the argument Ohio State will be more rested, right? Like, there's going to be less games they have to worry about where players could get injured, right? And I don't know if having more games tonight will help. I mean, if it plays out the way Notre Dame thinks it's going to play out, they're going to play 10 regular season games and then the ACC championship game. So they're going to have 11 games going into their bowl game, which is what they used to have, you know, before they expanded to 12 regular season games back in the day. So, or, you know, recently. So I think, I don't know if having more games will help or not. But I guess we'll find out if Notre Dame and Clemson both get to the playoff and they both win their playoff games. We'll just say it was because they played more games. So
we'll at least have something to base it on.
Right.
The other big headline coming out of Saturday, obviously, the end of the game, the celebration, students rushing the field. I know they're all being tested now at Notre Dame. What's that situation look like right now?
Well, they made sure to test players and students before the game as well on Saturday. I think that's kind of getting it wasn't really publicized beforehand because it wasn't a big story. Honestly, I don't think many people thought Notre Dame was going to win, so they needed to mention that the students got tested before in case they were going to rush the field. Brian Kelly thought they were going to win. Obviously, told his team that's kind of become folklore now almost. So I mean, no one on that field at least had tested positive. Now, that doesn't mean they didn't have it, right? You've seen where people test and they're negative, and then they test the next day and they're positive because maybe they had a small amount or, you know, enough to not test positive but still have it. There's been no testing update from Notre Dame since they announced on Sunday they were going to test everybody. They were planning, I think, on testing everybody before they left campus anyway because, again, like I mentioned earlier, the semester is coming up to the end here, and they're making sure everyone tests negative before they let them fly home, you know, wherever, travel back to their home area, which is smart. So, you know, Notre Dame football hasn't posted anything new about testing results. Their results last week were fine, but, you know, who knows? You know, if I'm assuming if something is bad, they will announce it, you know, later this week that, hey, you know, 20 people or whatever had it and we have to cancel. So I think we're going to be okay. But I've thought that 100,000 times this year, I think. Like, oh, I think we're going to be okay. We might be in the clear here. And then you see like what happened today in Indiana where the governor announces we're going back to stage 4 and like no fans and anything. So,
yeah. I think we're going to be okay. It's probably going to be on the tombstone of 2020 once we finally are able to put this year behind us. One more thing before we let you go. You were there in 2018. You saw that team. You went to the playoffs with them. How does this group compare to that 2018 squad?
I think the biggest difference between that team in 18 and now is just the pure athleticism of this current team is really unbelievable. I mean, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah at linebacker is an absolute freak. He defies physics. He really does. Kyle Hamilton at the safety position. He's a 6'6" safety. Like that. Like what do you like? That's incredible. And he moves like he's a 6'1" guy. He's really incredible. Kyron Williams as a running back is physical, and his pass protection is actually like maybe the best part of his game, and that's saying something because he runs for 150 yards a game. Michael Mayer, the freshman tight end, he's a beast. People call him Baby Gronk, and it's officially his nickname now because Liam Eichenberg, the offensive lineman, said it yesterday talking to the media. So he's officially Baby Gronk. It's been disputed amongst the Notre Dame media contingency this year, but he is Baby Gronk officially because Liam Eichenberg said it. Just want to go on the record and say that. Yeah, just the athleticism of this team. And then you combine that with experience, right? Like Ian Book is a third-year starter, and you got veteran guys, you know, Dalen Hayes. He's been there for 5 years. Ade Ogundeji on the D-line's been there for 5 years. Kurt Heinisch, senior defensive lineman. So you got more experience than you had in 2018. The entire offensive line that played in 18 is playing in 2020. So, like, that's obviously more game reps. The experience and the athleticism of this team is definitely higher than it was in 2018. And I think that's why they were able to win a game against Clemson, which they didn't win in 2018.
Absolutely. Well, thanks a lot for your time and your insight, Austin. And I'm sure with Notre Dame playing the way they are, we'll be checking in with you again before the end of the year.
I'm going to put in my travel request to either Pasadena or New Orleans right now. Is that okay?
Get in there early, no doubt. The earlier the sooner. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, George.
Thanks again to Austin for joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at AustinHuffTGN for all your Notre Dame news. Now let's stick with the college football theme and bring in Elton Hayes of CNHI Sports Pennsylvania and Kevin Brockway of CNHI Sports Indiana. Now we welcome in Elton Hayes of CNHI Sports Pennsylvania and Kevin Brockway of CNHI Sports Indiana. And guys, Kevin in particular, you're probably sitting on the biggest story in the Big Ten right now. The Indiana Hoosiers, a top 10 team for the first time since I think the 1960s, 3-0, and with a really good chance to go to 4-0 this week against Michigan State. What is the mood in Bloomington?
Yeah, first time since 1969, George, and it's definitely, very confident, very jubilant mood. When you hold Michigan to 13 yards rushing, I think that was the big takeaway, was the point of attack. And Indiana was talking about after the game about the physical practices they had leading up to the Michigan game, and it certainly showed on the field, being able to shut down a Michigan team that came into the game, ranked fourth in the Big Ten in rushing at 200 yards a game, completely took that away, made Michigan a one-dimensional team. Joe Milton made some throws in that game, but for the most part, Indiana had that game under control. And Michael Penix was just really sharp, especially in the first half, finishing the game with a career high 342 yards and 4 TDs. And, even Pat Forty in his national column for SI.com mentioned Penix is a little dark horse Heisman contender with the season that he's having so far. So a lot of positive buzz going on with Indiana football, but they go up to Michigan State to play for the old brass spittoon, one of those trophy games coming up, and looking to snap a more modest 3-game losing streak against them, which is 3 in a row dating back to 2016.
And if the Hoosiers get a win in this game on Saturday, they're going to move into first place all alone in the Big Ten East because Ohio State is not playing Saturday. What do you guys make of this and its impact on the conference? I guess let's go big picture a bit here. Maryland has positive tests. That's why the game got canceled on Saturday. Ohio State was supposed to go out to College Park and visit the Terrapins. That's not going to happen. We've already seen Wisconsin lose 2 games. Illinois was right at the limit. They were right on the edge of losing games. How concerned is the Big Ten right now about what's going on with this virus?
I think the conference brass has to be very concerned right now. We are entering week 4 of the season. 3 games have already been canceled. You mentioned Maryland's announcement today that it was pausing football-wide team activities because of a COVID outbreak. Penn State most recently played Maryland in State College on Saturday. Penn State released its COVID-19 numbers, its most recent ones, with 6 positives. However, Penn State doesn't specify the athlete or the teams of the affected athletes. So, worst case scenario, this impacts Penn State. It knocks another game off of the schedule for Nebraska, who's already had 1 game canceled because of the Wisconsin outbreak. So this kind of throws the Big Ten West and the East in a bit of in a bit of just disarray right now. And this was one of the concerns that prognosticators or whatever said. Hey. There were no bye weeks this season. There was no built-in mechanism for these teams to make up these games to kind of catch ground. It's 9 weeks, consecutively, no breaks, and you run into situations like these. Ohio State's playing really good football right now. One of the hottest teams in the country. This kind of throws a wrench into their progress for them having to unexpectedly sit out a week. And depending on how rampant this thing spreads, the Big Ten could have a really big problem on its hands.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You wonder if, obviously, if Indiana can pull out this win against Michigan State, and then you have a battle of 2 unbeatens, Ohio State will have the benefit of having an unexpected bye week. They'll be a little fresher, but maybe they won't be in the same kind of rhythm or sync that a team like Indiana would be. And I don't know, maybe later in the season it would benefit a team more, but maybe in the middle of the season, maybe it might throw Ohio State out of rhythm a little bit. That's going to be fascinating for me to see from a competition standpoint. And then just, nationally, it's just such a mess right now. We're at 135,000 cases, an all-time high. You're seeing games all across the SEC too, being postponed and pushed back this week. It's going to be a hard slog to get through this season. into mid to late December. And I think teams are trying to be as vigilant as they can, but it's just a case now where the virus is so prevalent and is going to be through the winter that's going to be really hard.
For sure.
And you mentioned kind of nationwide outlook here. One area that it seems like has really been impacted is the Heisman race. We all know Trevor Lawrence, of course. Clemson missed 2 games after a positive test. Florida's got a potential contender in Kyle Trask. They missed a couple weeks while they had some positive tests. Mac Jones in Alabama is going to miss a game this week against LSU because of COVID situation. And, of course, Justin Fields and Ohio State will be idle this week. How does this all come together, and how does it affect what was already a very hard to predict Heisman race?
I don't even know who the front runner is right now. Maybe the Love quarterback out of BYU, but from what I read, BYU is about to go on a prolonged stretch without an opponent just due to the way the schedule stacked up. So, you maybe look at some of these group of 5 players who have been playing each week, but I think across, the main names that you heard heading into the season as the front runners are definitely going to be impacted. But as Kevin had said earlier when we were talking about this, maybe a guy like Michael Penix, who's just really taken over the conference, the country, won a pair of national awards this week. If Indiana keeps doing the things that it's supposed to do, and its opponents don't get don't have any of these outbreaks, then a guy like Penix could be the beneficiary of just these outbreaks that are taking these other guys out of the race.
And let's not forget too, the Heisman also has a little bit of a career achievement component to it. So it might not necessarily be for what you do this year as well. So that's why I think Trevor Lawrence and Fields are still the 2 guys that might have a leg up regardless of how many games they play. I think that, but Kyle Trask will get that game back provided, they're able to make up that LSU game. So he will be able to put up some numbers there. And Indiana hasn't had any postponements yet. So, Penix will be able to put up good numbers too. It's just going to depend on the voters' interpretation of it in terms of, whether you make it a this year award or you take that kind of most valuable or career achievement into it as well.
And quickly, guys, basketball season hurtling towards us. We're seeing all sorts of cancellations, movement around. Seems like non-conference schedules are really tough to put together. Big Ten yet to release a conference schedule. Should there be concern on that front? Is it going to set up like the football season? Could there be delays or possibly, an announcement coming? Or do you feel confident they are going to start? They're just still kind of putting everything together, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's.
I think they're kind of looking at, what's going on with football. As we see cases nationwide are just blooming everywhere. You can put these players in a bubble as much as you want, but even in the most protected environments, the virus still finds its way to get in. I know I was looking at Penn State's website a couple days ago because, we're supposed to have media day with Penn State men's basketball soon. And the only game up on the schedule is the December 8th ACC Big Ten Classic in Blacksburg against Virginia Tech. So I don't even know if conference brass have even put together a schedule. I'm sure they're working with models, but as we get deeper into the fall and the winter here, as this virus continues to spread, I think their hands are kind of tied and just how far they can go.
Well, I know with Indiana, they're trying to work in that game with Tennessee Tech as a season opener at Assembly Hall on November 25th. They haven't finalized that yet, but there have been some rumblings that that's going to be the team. And they have, obviously the ACC Big Ten, it looks like the crossroads, and they're going to have the 3 games of the tournament. What's interesting, too, is, Wisconsin announced today no fans indefinitely at the Kohl Center for basketball. And Indiana just announced some state restrictions. So I'm wondering how that's going to play into it, too. No gatherings of 50 or more. They're scaling back to stage 4. It looks like, regardless, any hopes that these conferences or these schools had of having some capacity in arenas, given the state of the virus now, is out the window for the foreseeable future.
No doubt that's going to be a fluid situation, one I'm sure we're going to continue to watch. Thanks a lot for your time, guys, and we'll talk to you again next week.
All right, you all stay safe and have a good rest of the week.
Thank
you, George.
Thanks again to Elton and Kevin for joining us. You can follow Elton and the Penn State beat at EHDC12. You can follow Kevin and the IU beat at Kevin Brockway G1. Now let's take a look at the pro game in our weekly spot with Bill Burt of CNHI Sports Boston. Let's welcome in Bill Burt now. And Bill, we've got to talk some NFL news here. Let's start with the MVP race. Who do you feel like the front runner is at the midway point of the season?
So I'm guessing who you're going to pick. And the rest of the country is probably with your pick. The poor guy's never gotten a vote. I get it. Great player, but I'll let you plead your case later. Hands down, in my opinion, Patrick Mahomes is the MVP. He plays a different game than everyone else. Statistically, I don't know. It's like 26 or 25 touchdowns, 1 interception. I don't even go by that anymore. I throw out. I really do. I throw out completion percentage. You know, Cam Newton at one time, I think, was 19 of 20, and the Patriots had 10 points. So the stats are in a lot of cases not as important as they look. Every quarterback throws 70% completion percentage now. Back in 1970s, it was 70. It was 50%. That being said, I think Mahomes is the best. He's gotten better as the season has gone on. They're a very good team. You could argue he's got more weapons with him, and that offense is amazing. But the plays he makes in big games, and this goes back to the Super Bowl last year, did not have a great game, but in the fourth quarter, he won the game. And as Bill Parcells says, this is about winning. That's what this is about. It's not about anything else. So I say Patrick Mahomes. They're 8-1, I believe, and he, look, other quarterbacks might have got off to better starts, but he's, we're in the middle of November now, and he's playing his best. I don't see it changing, but like I said, there's a lot of people out there pushing for another guy.
Yeah, and I can't really argue against Mahomes. I think he's the best player in the league. If I had a draft right now of anybody in the league, he'd be the number one pick for me. I agree with everything you said, and I think he's a worthy MVP choice any year. I mean, honestly, I think you can. It's sort of like when Brady was on fire with the Patriots. You could make him the MVP any year, but I think just like Brady had to kind of deal with that expectations factor and people thinking, well, he's doing what he should do. I think that's going to work against Mahomes in the voting. And I think the front runner is Russell Wilson of the Seahawks, as you alluded to. I think he's really done a lot to overcome what's been a pretty horrific defense so far this year in Seattle. I think if you took Russell Wilson off the Seahawks right now, I'm not sure they'd be a playoff team. And for me, that's sort of my argument for him being the most valuable player. I think Mahomes is definitely the best player in the league. I think he's the guy who changes the game the most. I think Wilson right now is the guy who's most important to his team. I can't imagine where Seattle would be if they didn't have him under center. But I really don't think you could go wrong with either one of those guys. I think there's probably 28 or 29 teams in the league that would be more than happy to take either one of them and call him their starting quarterback right now. I know two of the teams that would be happy with either guy are the two teams we cover. New England got to win on Monday night. Much needed victory in the final seconds against the Jets. But what have you seen with the up and down nature of the Patriots this year?
Jekyll Hyde, and for the most part, it's been Hyde, so it hasn't been great. The second half of the Patriots game, it was the Jets, the 0-8 Jets, but they showed something that might get me to possibly go off. I said blow it up a couple weeks ago, and I think basically Belichick is blowing it up, meaning he's not bringing any high-priced talent, free agents, and he did make a trade at the trade deadline that was worth anything. So, but I was impressed. I was impressed with Cam's decision-making, which has been abysmal for over a month. The Patriots can run the ball. Their offensive line is very good. That's the sad part. Their weapons, worst weapons in the NFL, not even close. I mean, Jacoby Myers, who I like, is a number 3 or number 4 wide receiver. And he got Julian Edelman treatment from Cam Newton. And for some reason, the Jets didn't want to cover him. He was only throwing it to Jacoby Myers, and that's why the Jets are the Jets. But I was impressed with the Patriots. For most of the game, the Jets offensively moved the ball. Doesn't bode well. Patriots are playing Baltimore this week. Whole nother issue. But I was impressed. And I was there. I went down to New Jersey to see the game. I am just concerned defensively, that's been my concern, honestly, for most of the season. The offense hasn't looked good, but I was expecting this defense to be a little bit better, and it's been abysmal. And the Jets sort of went up and down the field with yards until literally the end of the game, literally last part of the fourth quarter. The defense got a little tighter, made a big interceptions. So I'm not going to go and say the Patriots are now a playoff team or will be fighting for a playoff team. I think we'll probably know a lot more this week. If they make it a good game, I may still say, you know what, they could get run off, go 8-8, steal that 7th playoff bid, which they could be competing with the Colts for. So I'm still going to leave the door open. Still don't like the team overall. Too many holes and too many average players.
Yeah, that Baltimore team, I obviously saw them firsthand on Sunday here in Indy, and I think they left the door open right now. They're having some issues. Ronnie Stanley's out for the year. When you lose your left tackle, that's never easy. That they did a good job of covering without him on Sunday, but that's something they're going to have to deal with moving forward. And then they lost Calais Campbell during the game, and it looks like he's going to miss some serious time. So that's a big piece of that defensive line over there for Baltimore that they won't have. And I think it'll be interesting to see how they adjust moving forward. I thought the Colts had a chance to make a statement against a team that's a likely playoff team. They've only beat one team with a winning record right now, and we'll see how long the Bears continue to be in that category. They're 4-1 against teams with losing records, 1-3 against teams with winning records. Had a chance on Sunday, led at halftime, and they couldn't get it done. And I think it's the opposite problem of what the Patriots are having. The defense is playing well above expectations. They're number 1 in the league right now in terms of yards allowed, number 3 in scoring. The first half against Baltimore was as good as I've seen anybody defend the Ravens. 18 yards rushing for a half. That's almost unheard of with that team. I think they were averaging 2.2 yards per play at that point. In the second half, they gave up some underneath stuff. Jackson did a really good job of taking what he was getting, and that allowed the Ravens to go on some long drives, take control of the game, but the offense did nothing. 1 yard in the third quarter. That's an unbelievable total. 10 points in the game. I think they were 2 of 11 on third down. There's injuries there. They missed Marlon Mack. There's no question about that. But the offensive line, while it's been protecting Phillip Rivers very well, we know he's not mobile. I think he's only been sacked 7 times through 8 games, but they're not getting the push in the run game that's expected. This is a team that was supposed to be a run-first team, supported by a big play quarterback. You're not seeing that, and I think it's costing them in big games. This week against Tennessee will be a huge one for them because it's obviously a tremendously big game in the AFC South. And right now, I don't know how the wild card situation is going to shake out for them. So I think it's very similar to the Patriots, Jekyll and Hyde. I think they've got to get this offense to a point where it can be competitive because the defense is playing well enough to win games. As we're talking about expectations, living up to them, living down, how about the Buccaneers and Tom Brady? A lot of momentum going into their big game against the Saints on Sunday night, and they kind of laid an egg on national television. What's your take on where they stand?
I had that game. I didn't call it a lock, but I thought that was a lock. They got they beat the first week of the season. Brady didn't look good. I question the coaching there, and it's not experienced in big games, winning, guiding a potential champion, and Brady has an aura about him. He's definitely affected a lot of people, but I was very disappointed. I kept saying 2 touchdowns down. Don't worry, that I think Tampa's going to still win the game. 3 touchdowns down. I go, going to be tough, but it'll look good on Brady's resume. Wins a big one, and they just never answered the bell, and that was stunning. And that's not a good sign that they were never in a game. I mean, you don't really say that for many teams this year, even the Jets, where it's over in the first quarter. Well, it was over in the first quarter in a game that mattered. Late game, Sunday night game. Very disappointed in the Bucs, who I think are a very good team. The Antonio Brown factor, that's interesting because he was definitely trying to get the ball to Antonio Brown. I think that relationship's going to work out in the end. I really do. I think Antonio Brown's the best receiver he was when he left the game. I think he's the best receiver in the game, the most consistent, the most productive. So I'm not ready to toss the buoy out on this team, but I was very disappointed. If you ask me, I thought that was the game. Like, I go back to the Colts game, that we weren't really talking about the Colts. They beat Baltimore. We're talking about the Colts. And the Bucs, I think if they win that game, then we're talking about them being probably a Super Bowl team. And that just ended. And I don't know. Do we look at the Saints differently? I don't know. We may have to, because they were tough. They just beat the living daylights out of them. They ran the ball well. Their defense is very good, and it's been good all year. And Breeze is, he's checking down more than he's done before, but he's still smart. Still making those 3rd down and 10 completions for 11 yards. So it's interesting. A lot of teams are, and we're hitting that. This is a time of year where we get to know who these teams really are. The Colts intrigue me because this is a big week. Not many people are going to pick them to beat Tennessee. They beat Tennessee. I'm looking at them differently.
There's no doubt. This game is a huge game on the schedule. And the Colts are in a stretch where that's all they're playing right now. They play Baltimore. They got Tennessee. They've got the Packers coming in next week, and then they're going to host Tennessee. It's one of those really quick turnarounds in the division. So I think the next 3 weeks are really going to tell us a lot about where the Colts are. I have no idea right now what to make of the NFC. I know the NFC East is not in the race. I can rule them out.
Yep.
But beyond that, is Green Bay the best team in the conference? We've seen them look bad at times. Are the Saints the best team in the conference? They're flawed, but they're definitely doing a lot of things well right now. Can the Buccaneers get back on pace and take that spot? Seattle just lost a game at Buffalo that you would probably think they should have won, not to discount the Bills, who are a good team. But that's the thing. If you're going to go to the Super Bowl, you'd think you would win that game. I'm not really sure what to make of that, but I think it's fun. And I wonder what your take is. You've got Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. You've got Seattle with Russell Wilson. You've got Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. You've got New Orleans with Drew Brees. I think that adds to the intrigue here.
I think the best 2 teams are Kansas City and Pittsburgh. Now, Pittsburgh, obviously, Roethlisberger is going to be out for a week, probably 2 weeks. They could lose both those games. But they're and again, look, we said this, we both said this since the beginning. Coaching and quarterbacks, those are the teams that are going farther and farther here and better. That's why I'm questioning Green Bay yet. I don't know. I saw it at the stat where Aaron Rodgers, again, 25 touchdowns or 24 touchdowns, 1 or 2 interceptions. Outstanding. But they have not looked great in the big moments. So that's going to be an interesting game when they play the Colts. So the NFC, I would say the best 2 teams, if you ask me, is going to be right now. The AFC Championship is going to be Kansas City and Pittsburgh, and Baltimore pushing them. In the NFC, I thought it was Tampa, but I'm not ready. Tampa's got an immaturity about them. I think they are the most talented team. Maybe they get their act together. But, Seattle's defense is horrible. You're giving up 35, 40 points a game. You can't win. And the later the season goes on, defense is going to be more important. I don't care how good Russell Wilson is. And I know that. The Patriots had 10 years from 2017 to 2004 to 2014 where they didn't win a Super Bowl. And there's 5 or 6 years of best offense in the game. Defense, okay, bend but don't break. That's not good enough. Defense has got to be a little better than that. So NFC is a flip of the coin right now. But right now, if I had to give an edge, I'd probably give it to New Orleans. They showed me something.
They did. There's no doubt. Lots of storylines still to play out. Thanks a lot for your time, Bill, and we will talk to you again next week.
Great stuff. Say hi to Heather for me.
Thanks again to Bill for joining us. You can follow him in the New England Patriots coverage at Burt Talks Sports. You can follow me in the Indianapolis Colts at GM Bremer. Now let's get a national perspective and head out to Oklahoma and Clay Horning. Now we check in with Clay Horning of CNHI Sports Oklahoma. And Clay, we've seen a very charged political atmosphere across the country. I think it only stands to reason that you're going to see that with athletes as well. I think we've heard their voices across from the college ranks all the way to the top of the pro levels. We've heard their voices louder, more consistently than any time I can remember during my lifetime. What do you make of sort of the sea change that's happened across the athletic landscape, and what does it mean as we move forward?
Well, a couple of things, and there's an encyclopedia perhaps that could answer all of that question. But anyway, I see athletic activism at a crossroads because they essentially, it's very interesting. They never named the side they were on. It was clear the side they were on, NBA at least. I mean, it's undoubtedly, and their side won. And I've just written this national column that hopefully everybody will see tomorrow. that explains that there is not a history of athletic activism winning in its own time. John Carlos and Tommy Scott raised gloved fists in Mexico City. They were thrown out of Olympic Village the next day. Muhammad Ali lost 3.5 years in his prime for standing up, refusing to be drafted. Curt Flood, sued to be a free agent, St. Louis Cardinals, lost his career. So here we are, and they won. And you can even make an argument that in Georgia they won very directly because 40,000 votes were cast inside State Farm Arena, the Hawks Arena, which was part of the NBA's wanting to turn arenas into polling places, and some of them did become polling places. So I see them at a crossroads. That the guy that they wanted in the White House, despite the best efforts perhaps of the guy who will eventually be on the way out of the White House, that is their guy. So do they pull back, relax? Now, at least at a executive federal level, it would appear that the causes and concerns that they were championing are going to be addressed, or do they lean into it and just remain engaged? And my take was, hopefully they will remain engaged, and independent of where you are in the political spectrum, the one place where we're not polarized as a nation, you could make the case, is between professional athletes who, for the most part, come from a different background than the people who are buying the tickets to watch them, particularly the people courtside and close. And in that arena, for the most part, and certainly in Oklahoma City, where I've covered, the love goes both ways. And the fans in those seats, Oklahoma, by the way, 77 counties, every one of them red this time and last time. The fans love the players love the fans, and though they may never vote identically, my sense is if the players remain engaged, it'll at least help people on one side of a fence to see things through the eyes of people on another side of the fence, which will make us less polarized. And then we can fight it out every 4 years, but unless perhaps we'll get a few more things done if we're less polarized. And not that athletes can solve all of that problem, but they can help. They can absolutely help.
Yeah, there's any doubt that sports plays a big role in bringing the country together at all times. Whatever our divisions may be, I think you can go back through history and see that, there's a way to find common ground through athletics. And I also think, anybody, the more people we have engaged in general in our politics and in our voting systems, the better democracy is. And the more voices that are heard, that just seems like the natural way to go to me. So I 100% agree with everything you're saying there.
One would hope that more participation, even more voting, is not a radical idea. It's voting itself seems to have become politicized, and that's not good for this country. So, and among the slogans on the backs of NBA jerseys, in addition to Black Lives Matter and equality, was just the word vote very often. So yeah, everything you were saying, absolutely.
So we'll see. Hopefully they can play a role in helping things to come back together a little bit. I think everybody wants to see that, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. Kind of along the lines of, I guess, breaking norms or going outside of traditional roles. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they have a new head coach. He doesn't necessarily fit the profile that you normally see in the modern NBA head coach.
Well, that's true. His name is Mark Daigneault. He's 35 years old. He never even played college basketball. He was a trainer for Jim Calhoun's Connecticut program for 5 seasons. Then went to Florida, became an assistant, and in 2014 joined the Thunder and became the Thunder's G League Oklahoma City Blue coach. So he does, interestingly, he worked for Billy Donovan at Florida, but he got to Oklahoma City 1 year before Donovan got to Oklahoma City. He had a winning record with the Blue. It's an unusual hire in the sense that when we wait for a dramatic hire, it's almost who can win the back page with the big splash, and he is not a big splash, but he's not uncommon for Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City's had 4 coaches since moving from Seattle. PJ Carlesimo lasted less than half a season, and the next three, Scott Brooks, Billy Donovan, now Mark Daigneault, will all have been first-time NBA coaches with the Thunder. So, and I mean, you can say this, that we're living in a world where there are now Chris Paul rumors to Phoenix, by the way. And so and if Paul goes, you wonder if they're going to attempt to let everybody go, like Steven Adams, for instance, who's got time left on his contract. So he would be a guy who would not be under pressure to win, immediately. And he'd be a guy who would have the opportunity to lead the franchise through this space of trying to replenish itself and becoming a contender again, which may happen. You never know without ever missing the playoffs. That's possible. 16 teams make the playoffs. Or it may not. But at any rate, he would have the opportunity to be here during the rebuilding, which could be a couple, 3, even 4 seasons. And things go well. I mean, he could be a long-term NBA head coach. And Sam Presti, general manager, has a track record of not failing and fleecing other teams for draft picks. So he ought to have the tools to at least be competitive. So they're unlikely to fire a winner until that winner has sort of proven to them they can't perhaps take it any further, which is why I think Scott Brooks was let go. When Scott Brooks was let go, he was fairly long-term for an NBA coach. Mm-hmm. And so was Donovan, for crying out loud, even though it was just 5 seasons. So, yes.
It's a shorter life expectancy for NBA coaches. There's no doubt about that. And I think Thunder operate a lot like the Pacers do here in Indiana, where it's draft driven and it's, draft and develop guys. And it sounds like this coach is maybe along those lines, the teacher and somebody who's going to try to take a player from here to here. Is that sort of the idea right now?
Well, I mean, I think it goes without saying that that's part of his job description. He was literally a developmental league coach, where you get a few 22, 23-year-olds that undrafted, college athletes that played all 4 seasons, but you also get a whole bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds that wanted to come to the league immediately and found out there was no place for them in the NBA immediately. So absolutely, he's got to do that, and it's just going to be a mad scramble to see. From where Sam Presti's sitting, not a mad scramble, but as a watcher, because trades can begin to occur, I believe, on the 20th. The draft is the 22nd of this month. The season begins on December 22nd. It's just, I mean, I can give you 4 guys who are maybe 5 who are going to be on the Thunder roster, and even if they unload Chris Paul, Steven Adams, Nerlens Noel's free, Danilo Gallinari's not coming back. Even if they've still got to fill out the roster with a bunch of low money guys. Even that's going to be interesting to see who they can bring. And I mean, who's their next 2-way guy that's going to enter the starting lineup and become the best defender in the NBA? So, like Lou Dort wound up being. So anyway, all these things are about to unfold. So we have that to look forward to, and other things like college football and the Masters. And so
it's definitely a sprint now for the NBA, especially if you're the Lakers or the Heat. I think there's 7 weeks, if I remember correctly, from the end of the final game of the NBA Finals to when you're going to start the regular season. It's kind of unheard of, but it's on the other end of the spectrum. You've got 8 teams that didn't go to the bubble who haven't played since March.
Right.
Kind of and a season unlike any other is now led to an off season unlike any other, correct?
Absolutely. And it's like, and I wish I could offer great insight into it. All I can tell you is things are going to happen really fast. I think we don't know if it's going to be very hard to sign long term. Also, what's happened since we talked last was the salary cap, I believe, is going up 3, or the luxury threshold anyway, 3%. I think the NBA has lost a lot of revenue, and it seems like it's interesting. They're not bringing it down any, but they seem to see it at slower growth going forward while revenues catch up. But you just don't know if in this atmosphere teams are willing to go long term with somebody, or if a player understands that there's not a market for contracts like that and therefore is looking at 1-year deal, 2-year deal, when he might otherwise be looking for a longer deal. So we don't even know the trends, but but in a week we'll have an idea, and in 3 weeks it'll be over. And so yeah, crazy. A whole offseason of drama will take place in the NBA before the college football season the college football season is still going on. Presuming everybody stays COVID free and doesn't have big, celebrations in their stadium after knocking the number 1 team in the country off. So yeah, it's crazy. It's a crazy time.
Absolutely is. There's a lot to come in the next few weeks, no doubt about it. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about here as we move forward. Thanks a lot for your time, Clay. We'll check in with you again next week.
You bet. Thank you.
Thanks again to Clay for joining us. You can follow our national sports columnist at Clay Horning. And thanks again to all of you for going inside the game with us. We'll see you again next week.